Hi everyone, it's Marc de Bruin from simplifyinglife.com.au. Today I'd like to discuss a TED Talk that I watched recently by Netware, an interesting guy who spoke about why we always have so much trouble with creating happiness or chasing happiness. And his theory is that it has to do with our expectations, which is quite well known within counseling and psychology. Our expectations are often too high. But he split it up in three really interesting parts. He said, look, there's three ways that our expectations run away with us. And the first one he discussed was what he called the imagination gap. The fact that our expectations are often way higher than the reality ultimately is. If we want something, we look for it, want to go on a holiday, pick the right spot, want to buy a new car, we compare cars and want to pick the right car. And we built this picture up in our mind about how this car or this holiday is going to be. And then generally, the reality always has an element where it does not meet our expectations. There's something wrong with it, or it's just not as beautiful as we thought it was, or it looks different than we thought it would look, etc., etc. So often there is a gap between what we think things are going to be and what reality turns out to be like. And that creates a level of unhappiness. And the second gap that he said, it's the gap in interpersonal, or the interpersonal gap, let's call it that way. So often for our own happiness, we not only look at ourselves and how we're doing and how can we can improve, we often look at others, how they are doing and what they are producing and creating for them to be happy. And that is a big trap that we pretty much all fall in. We look at others to model our own levels of happiness, and often it just doesn't work that way. We get carried away by how others look, what others make in terms of money, what they do in terms of achievement, the people they hang out with, the places they go to, and we fall short. So that interpersonal gap is a big expectation creator and a reality killer, if you want to call it that way. The third one that he discussed, which I find a very interesting one as well, is the temporal gap, or I think he calls it temporal imagination gap or whatever. Anyway, it boils down to the fact that generally we will be happier, and that's something that science indicates as well, when over time our levels of well-being, money, health, otherwise go up. As long as they go up, we're doing all right and we see progress. So someone who starts at $100,000 income but slowly over the years whittles down to about $60,000 income will have generally, as science suggests, will have a lower level of happiness than someone who starts at a $60,000 income and over the time works themselves up to a $100,000 income. Not always true, but there seems to be some truth to it. And this is in particular relevant when we look at raising kids. When we raise our kids, when we overdo stuff, when we give them everything there is, all the best stuff, the best clothing, the best toys, the best schooling, whatever else, these kids already have such high expectations when they go into the world as adults that to have that temporal gradient, things going up, becomes really hard because they already had it that good. So our best intentions to give our kids the best they can have actually starts working against them, because to raise that level even further means that they have to work harder. Same with saying to kids, for instance, that they're the best ever, the most beautiful, the most loved. You're so good, you're doing really well, you can do anything, you can become Beyonce, you can become Nicole Kidman, whoever you want to be, or the male version of those. When you set kids up that way, then first of all, that's really tough, because to live up to the expectation is really hard. But the reality shows that it's not that easy to get to that level quite often. So it makes it harder for these kids to live up to not only your expectations, but also the expectations that they've now made themselves, the imagination gap. So there's a lot of stuff going on in that field of our expectations just not correlating to what is reality. So how do you change that? Tough thing. Counseling is a good way, but a couple of hints and tips for you. If you're looking at the imagination gap as like when our expectations are too high compared to what the reality is, well, doing a good reality check is already a good start. Don't think per se that everything you're going to choose is going to be as wonderful as you think it is, because it's probably not going to be that way. And it's not being pessimistic, it's just adjusting your expectations to a realistic level so you don't aim too high and get disappointed by what you're getting. That already can still give you a happiness jump without the level of disappointment that comes with that. When it comes to the interpersonal gap, it's simple. Teach your kids, teach yourself to try and compete with yourself if you want to compete, but look at yourself for a standard of improvement. Don't look at others for a standard of improvement, and stay away from the social media and the ads that try and portray a picture of being like someone else as being the better version of you, because that just doesn't work. So if you want to compare yourself to something, compare yourself to yourself and see if you can improve from there. The temporal gap, or the intertemporal gap, the time in between, that is a relatively easy one. Aim for gradual increase in capacity, gradual increase in health, gradual increase in money, potentially gradual increase in career, but don't get too hyped up about it that you have to be at that high level. Just always look for a gradual increase in levels of whatever, whether it's wisdom, knowledge, money, career-wise, just gradually, just be on a sliding scope up. That's simple tips. I think if you want to work through that completely and start to experience more levels of happiness, a good way could be to talk it through with a counselor or a coach, someone who can keep you level-headed, can keep you on the ground without you going off into cyberspace somewhere, but also making sure you don't fall for the traps by comparing ourselves to others and comparing past with future and then coming short, selling yourself short in the present. So if that's of any interest, the Tech Talk can be found, Netware, W-A-R-E, Net, N-A-T. Look them up. Otherwise, come and have a chat with me. If you got questions, you know where to find me, email me, Facebook me, whatever. And I look forward to discussing this topic with you. Have a great one.